What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Points Per Podcast. Thank you for joining us. My name's Eric. That's my co-host, Will. And today we're going to be diving right back into the 2026 Dynasty Rookie class. Today we're focusing specifically on the wide receiver group. If you've missed either of our last two Dynasty Focus videos, we did do a mock draft / tier list, and then we also did a running back deep dive last week. So if you're interested in either of those, I highly suggest you hit that subscribe button and check those videos out after you watch this one. But I'm especially excited for this video. One, just because I think wide receivers are my favorite position to evaluate, but also because I think that they are the strength of this 2026 group in general. And so I'm really excited to get into this one. But before we do, Will, how you doing today, man?
Hey man, I'm feeling good too. I'm actually excited to talk about this group because, like you said, after actually taking a good look at this class, it's a little bit stronger than I thought it was going to be, initially going into this. So excited to talk about the group for sure.
Absolutely. And I'll let you kick us off because, like I said, we did that mock draft video. I did that one with Vishy. So I haven't gotten your thoughts on these wide receivers yet. I want to hear who you have first on your list.
So, first on my list, if I want to get cute, I would go with my controversial pick here, but I'm going to stay with the safe side. I'm going to go with the upside as well. And I'm sticking with Jordan Tyson from Arizona State. He's sort of been the consensus, but there has been a lot of discussion between him and the other two guys we're going to talk about in this sort of tier. But when it comes to Jordan Tyson, he kind of has everything that you would want out of a wide receiver with the frame itself, 6'2", 195. You want to see him to bulk up a little bit, but at the same time, it's a good frame for a wide receiver to have. In terms of him and his play style, he's an elite playmaker, especially in open space. He's great with run after the catch. He runs very aggressively. He's a great separator with good hands, and he makes big plays in contested catch situations and just big play situations as well. So he's proven to shine in just the mundane areas, but also shine in the big times and big moments as well. And anything I feel like that in his game would need to be worked on is pretty negligible to a certain point. Like things like crispness on his routes. He's already a very good route runner. That's just things that need to get tightened up at the next level. Things like his frame, he could bulk up a little bit, but again, that's something that just stands to be seen at the next level. And sometimes he can get tunnel vision as a runner. I've seen other reports say that as well, but that's something that can just get worked on as well, just using blockers and manipulating space better and just getting better against the press, which could come with gaining weight and bulking up a little bit more too. But just all in all, Jordan Tyson as a prospect and amongst this group, I think he does have the most upside out of anybody.
I think that's really fair to say. And I think that probably is kind of like you mentioned at the top, more so the consensus pick. Um, when I did that mock draft video with Vishy, I actually had Jordan Tyson last of kind of this top three that I'm sure we'll get into here shortly. Um, And I have a hard time. They're definitely all in a tier together. I'm a big fan of Jordan Tyson. I think all of the things that you said are absolutely true. He's incredibly athletic. He can jump out of the gym. He's got really good ball tracking and body control, fluid mover. I like his versatility in terms of his ability to line up all across the formation. Um, when I was looking into some of his statistics and his analytical profile, there were a few things that were a little bit concerning. I thought that he was taking a slight step back from what was an incredibly impressive sophomore year into this year. Um, like his yards per route run was a little bit down. And I thought that his per route run metrics were slightly lower than they were last year, but upon a deeper dive over these past couple weeks, he actually comes out really favorably in a lot of those categories. Some of the most predictive stats when looking at projecting college wide receivers into the NFL and how they'll produce from a fantasy perspective are those per route run efficiency metrics, looking at yards per route run, first downs per route run, targets per route run. And he comes out really favorably in all three. He is a little bit behind the likes of Carnell Tate and Mekhi Lemon in terms of yards per route run, but he's competing with them, if not outperforming them in first downs and targets per route run. So I think this is a really close group, and it's hard to decide between. I still kind of have him a little bit behind those guys, but it's minuscule.
Yeah.
Um, so I like that. Let's pull this back up. I think the guy that I had first in the video 2 weeks ago and the guy that I'm still probably going to have first now is going to be Mekhi Lemon, which I think is probably the outlier pick in terms of consensus and in terms of dynasty community right now. I think a lot of people would have him third, and certainly in the mock draft community, I've never seen him in the top 10 of like an actual NFL mock draft so far, where I've seen Tate and Tyson be up that high. But for me, I just think kind of the mold that he fits into is a really fantasy friendly one, and one that we've seen produce at a high level throughout the years recently. I think he's going to be kind of like that flanker slot type. He has shown some versatility, just like we talked about with Tyson, where he's this year especially lining up in more positions across the formation. He can play some X, he can play some Z, but I think he's more likely to translate into that kind of flanker F role. And I'm not going to comp him to these guys necessarily, but just to give you an idea of the type of fantasy friendly role that could be, we're talking about guys like Amon-Ra St. Brown, Cooper Kupp, and Puka Nacua in LA. Brock Bowers even plays that role. If we want to kind of step down from that elite tier, we're talking about guys like Khalil Shakir is kind of the floor that we're looking at. And I think that he shares a lot in common, both statistically and on film, with those guys. He's not necessarily the biggest at 5'11", 195. He's not the most athletic. He's not going to have burner speed. He's not going to kill the combine, just like a lot of those guys, struggled with as well. But I think he's really strong for his size. I think he's a really willing and capable blocker, which is going to be really important to play this role. That's something that you have to be able to do kind of when you're put in line or in that slot close to the line of scrimmage area. And I think he's got really good change of direction. He's a good separator, and he's able to find gaps in zone coverage, and also really, really impressive after the catch with his yak ability. So even if he's not, to that sky high level of the Amon-Ra St. Browns and Puka Nacuas, I think he fits a similar sort of mold. And if he finds the right scheme fit in the NFL, he could live up to that. And analytically, I thought there were a lot of things that projected him into that range as well. In terms of his yards per route run, when I looked at it 2 weeks ago, he was at 3.64. That has dropped to 3.29, but still a really impressive number. Highest PFF receiving grade in the country. Really impressive yak at 7.7 yak yards per reception. Also really good in those same metrics I talked about with Jordan Tyson in terms of his per route run efficiency. So yeah, big fan of Makai Lemon, even if that's kind of the outlier pick. I'm curious what you think.
No, I actually agree with a lot of that. I think he's one of those guys. He's a smaller guy, but he plays like he's way bigger than he is. Also, he's just kind of a dog, like you said. That home run ability is there. Like he can take some away. And just the fact that he is 5'11" and he has a contested catch rate of 57.1%, I think that's pretty impressive in itself. Just kind of shows he will go up there and get him. And just some of the notes I have, just to reiterate some of the things you said, not a blocker, but doesn't really have to be to succeed at the next level, but will give an attempt. I've seen some plays where he did try and whiff a little bit, but it's just because he's a smaller guy. Uh, Great yak demon and big play guy that could be a number one, but I think he's going to end up in the slot a lot. But that's not a bad thing, especially in today's NFL where we've seen guys highly valued from being in those roles, like Eric mentioned. So, yeah, I'm very optimistic about Makai Lemon. He's not quite my number one because my number one is actually the next guy that we're going to talk about. Now, I've been known to nuke some videos with some crazy takes, so I wanted to talk about Jordan Tyson first. But the guy that I really think could shake out and be the wide receiver one of this class is Carnell Tate from Ohio State. And it's just because we've done this song and dance before so many times already. We just did it last year where we kind of saw Emeka Egbuka and we saw him as a guy who was a slot guy, not a super high ceiling guy, but a high floor guy, someone that is going to go to the NFL. He's going to make a difference. He's going to get a role, but when is it going to happen? We don't really know. And he wasn't really showing any type of real eliteness in anything, but just a real jack of all trades. Now, when we done some interviews with Emeka Egbuka this year, he said things like the school had him play a role. And one thing the school said, and that the coaches have reiterated at the next level, is that he will just play his role and be happy in that because he's contributing to the team. Now, I feel like that's something that Ohio State does with these guys is they can tuck them into a role and they won't look like an alpha jumping off the papers. But in terms of just everything they're getting done for the team, there's nothing that you would really say is missing from their game. So just to talk about Carnell Tate himself, he's 11 for 12 on contested catches so far. He's got a 4% drop rate over his career. Like, don't let the smooth taste fool you. This guy could have very like Emeka Egbuka-esque potential in terms of this class. Like, He's a guy that I would describe as a high-end wide receiver 2 that does have wide receiver 1 potential at that next level.
Yeah, no, I like this take a lot. He's who I have as my number two, and I think probably is the safest of this top three group. He's exactly what you said, what you'd expect from an OSU wide receiver. Fundamentally sound, pro ready, really good route runner, incredibly sticky hands. I love that you
Mhm.
mentioned that contested catch ability. Yeah, you said 11 of 12. If you also just look at his reception percentage of 82.9%, considering his incredibly high ADOT right now, that's wild that he's
Yeah.
reeling in that many of his targets. So really sticky hands. I think he's got incredible sideline awareness. He's a good separator. Currently, he is the second highest PFF receiving graded receiver, right behind Mekhi Lemon in the country. He does have lower volume stats than both Tyson and Lemon, but that's pretty easy to explain considering he's playing alongside the
Yeah.
maybe the best wide receiver prospect we've ever seen in Jeremiah Smith. Can't wait to talk about him in
Oh my
2027.
gosh.
Um, but he's still within shouting distance in terms of raw production. He's putting up a bunch of touchdowns. He's got a bunch of high yardage games, and so that's been really impressive to see. He currently has the highest yards per out run of anybody in this class at 3.52. That's a huge number. Um, Really kind of my only knock on him in his profile is I think a little bit of a lack of ability with the ball in his hands. He's not very much of a yak threat. Only 4.5 yak yards per reception and only 11.8% missed tackles forced per reception, which is pretty low in terms of guys that I've had in my wide receiver model going back to 2019. Just looking at how he compares historically to other high end receiver prospects, that one's not as encouraging, but pretty much everywhere else across the board and in those predictive per route run metrics, he looks fantastic. So I'm a huge fan of this one.
Absolutely. But who do you have up next?
So I want to know if you agree with me, but I think that there's a pretty considerable teardrop after these top
Yes.
three. Yeah.
Absolutely agree.
I think those guys have the potential to be elite. And maybe if we have time at the end of the video, we can kind of compare them to previous wide receiver classes and how we think they stack up. But we drop down to this number four. It's hard to find a consensus, but the guy that I think I probably want to bring up next is going to be Chris Bell out of Louisville. I think he's got a really high range of outcomes. I thought this was funny. This is something I brought up in that mock draft video as well. Um, but Dane Brugler, one of the best college evaluators out there, he he said that Chris Bell is somewhere on the spectrum between Traylon Burks and AJ Brown. So like wildly, vastly different outcomes here.
Yeah.
Similar body types, and people had very high expectations of Traylon Burks as a prospect. Um, I see a lot of the same things where he is 6'2", 220. He's an absolute beast in terms of just physicality and size. Big, physical, fast, really impressive acceleration for somebody that big. But then we get into the negatives pretty early. Like I don't see a lot of separation from him on tape. I see almost all of his routes being vertically breaking in terms of like goes, comebacks, and hitches. When he does get horizontally breaking routes, they're typically just like drags and quick outs, which can be useful, but I don't see a lot of the more fantasy friendly digs and stuff in kind of that intermediate middle area of the field. I do think that he uses his size and strength to ward off DBs when it comes to like back shoulder catches and things like that. Um, but then when we get into the analytics, he's got a really concerningly high contested target percentage, which kind of matches what I just talked about with the lack of separation on film. He does have a really high yards per route run at 3.11, but that's just for this year. Throughout his college career, that was significantly lower. His average for his entire career is down at right around 2. Um, he's been high volume and has really good raw production so far this year. This has definitely been his kind of breakout season. But he's a senior right now, and in the previous 3 years, we just haven't seen that level of impressive production to this point. So I'm curious your thoughts on Chris Bell.
Yeah, I think it is interesting that he was able to progress as much as he did between last year and previous years and this year. Because, like you said, obviously this is the breakout year. But it's like you said, he's not really great at anything, but he does have good long speed and he has good contact balance because he is, like you said, he's built like a running back. He's like 227. He's a big guy. But when it comes to him doing the actual wide receiver things, he's not great at it. He doesn't have a whole lot of discipline either. I saw a lot of plays where at like the top of routes, he'll be very physical, but almost like too much, where he'll draw those offensive pass interferences as well. So it's one of those where I could see him very much being a role player at the next level. But if he has him in the right situation, he could be a very valuable role player, but he would have to end up in the right spot. But again, that's kind of everybody. I feel like landing spot is a crucial thing for everyone.
Yeah, especially once you get outside that top 3, the likelihood that we're talking about, true difference makers at the position goes down quite a bit, and exactly like we talked about at the top, I think the range of outcomes with him is huge, but I'm willing to shoot for upside, once we get past that top 3, but, I'll let you go here next. Who is your next receiver on the list?
Next receiver I got up on the list. We love a 6'4" wide receiver. I'm going with Denzel Boston out of
Yes,
Washington.
sir.
Like I said, he's just built like a prototypical X. He looks like an X receiver, and honestly, this season he's taken over some games like he is an X receiver. Particularly against our alma mater, Maryland. He had a huge game against us, and he has strong hands. He's able to outmuscle corners just due to the big size and frame that he has. And his drop rate is actually incredibly low. He's got a 2.2% drop rate. He's only had one drop on the season. He doesn't have the most burst, but at the same time, at 6'4", if you give him enough time to build up a route, the speed can get up there. But it does take him a little bit to get there from time to time. And he's 66.7% on contested catches, which is exactly what you want to see out of your big target, out of a prototypical X role. He's just somebody who can go up and get it. He can't do it at a super reliable rate. And he's not the best separator because, again, he's not the fastest guy in the world. But I do think he is someone that will be able to find a role at the next level, just strictly due to frame and due to what he is able to do when the ball does get in the area.
Yeah, I like this one a lot. He's who I was kind of debating between him and Chris Bell as my next up on the list. I think Denzel's probably a little bit safer. And I love all of what you said. I echo all of those same sentiments. At 6'4", 209, it's not often that you see a guy that big returning punts or getting like design bubble screens. And so I think it really shows the amount of athleticism that he has, that the team is willing to design those things for him. Um, but just in terms of analytics, since I think you really outlined the film really well, the things that concern me a little bit are his low yak numbers. Yak per reception of only 3.6 and missed tackles forced below 10%. Those are like exceedingly low numbers. But with a guy of this frame, you're not going to expect him to be breaking tackles and be super elusive in the open field. He's going to be making those jump ball catches and things like that. So it's not necessarily a terrible thing. It just limits his upside a little bit. Um, his per route run numbers were fine. They didn't stack up nearly with those top 3 guys, but we don't necessarily expect them to. High touchdown producer. I like that. And his ADOT is actually really high this year, which is kind of different than what we saw in his sophomore year. He went from an 11.4 ADOT all the way up to 16.1. So I'm curious if there's more versatility that he has than we're kind of seeing from him this year. He's been a little bit pigeonholed as just kind of that downfield go ball guy, where I think maybe he does have the capability to work in that short and intermediate area. He's just not being used there this year.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think that there is more potential for him to do more, but at the same time, he's got to get that opportunity as well.
Yeah. All right. Tough decision for me, but I think the next guy that I'm going to bring up is Elijah Surratt out of Indiana. Um, This is another guy that I haven't seen super high on a lot of people's lists in the Dynasty community. But I can already tell he's going to be kind of like my analytical darling. Like his numbers just pop off the page, even if what I've seen on film from him isn't quite as impressive as those stats would indicate. On film, I do think he is good at creating late separation on his routes. I think he's big and physical at the catch point, supported by the fact that he's 6'2", 213. He's got a really good frame on him. But from the analytical perspective, he's a top-tier producer. Um, just in terms of raw production, he's really high up there in terms of PFF receiving grade. Um, all of his per route run metrics that I've been talking about with these other receivers, really, really impressive. He is competing with those guys in the top three. His best season yards per route run is at 2.92. Best season first downs per route run is at 0.146, which is actually above any of those top three, Lemon, Tate, and Tyson. His targets per route run is also in the same vicinity at 0.27. So I really like what he shows us from an analytical perspective, especially in his first down metrics. They're some of the highest that I've actually ever seen.
Yeah.
Um, so I just think he's really efficient. And he's in a decent situation this year. We'll see if it continues throughout the season. I know that he's not as high on a lot of other people's lists, so I kind of want to see if maybe it's just been outlier performance to this point, or if the rest of the community catches up and starts to agree with me. But what are your thoughts here?
I think he's one of those guys as the season goes along, people will start to look towards him a little bit more because I definitely did. I had him in a similar spot. I had him maybe one spot lower than this, but
Okay.
that's just because, like you said, consensus is still catching up a little bit.
Yeah.
But just things like you said, when it comes to first down metrics or even touchdown metrics, last year, 43 of his 53 receptions were touchdowns or first downs. So far this year, 38 of his 45 have done the same. So, yeah, he's absolutely somebody they go to on important, situations, but he's just someone they go to early and often, and that's what you wanna see.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Who do you want to put on the list next?
Next up, we're going over to Bama. We got Jeremy Bernard.
Oh,
We got
yeah.
Jeremy Bernard. Just a guy who, again, with these Alabama receivers lately, it's been kinda tough to really see any pass production on any of them because those Jalen Milroe years really kinda threw some wrenches in things. But
Yeah.
now that, brighter days are ahead, the ball is getting aired out a little bit more. Some of the guys are coming a little bit more to the forefront, and Jeremy Bernard is one of them. Now he's not like I said, he's not a game breaker. He's not someone I'm running to go draft right now, but at the same time, I think he's someone with potential. I think he's someone who's great in open field. He's great elusive after the catch. He's a jack of all trades, so he's a pretty good route runner. He's a pretty good separator. Not really elite at either, but still pretty good metrics at both. He has a 3% drop rate, so he is a pretty reliable target as well. So I think he's one of those guys that, the short to intermediate game is sort of huge for him. And if he's put into the right situation, like I say always, he could make an impact very early on if put in the right situation.
Yeah, I think all of that is absolutely true. This is right around the range that I had him as well. I found it a little bit interesting. I thought he looked a lot better on film to me than his analytics looked. Um, I think he's a really good athlete and a high end yak threat, exactly like you said. The low A dot does concern me a little bit in terms of like gadgety type usage.
Yeah.
And just looking at those same per route run efficiency metrics that I've been referencing throughout the video, he lags behind almost the entire group, pretty much across the board. Yards per route run down at 2.24, first downs per route run almost below zero point 0.1, targets per route run of 0.21, and a low dominator rating as well, even in situations where you feel like he could be the wide receiver one. I know this year, and I guess even last year, maybe I'm not giving him enough credit, but he's been alongside Ryan Williams, another 2027 talent that's going to be highly regarded. So maybe I shouldn't expect crazy high numbers in those categories, but yeah, on film he really popped, and I liked what I saw there. And he's another guy that's kind of a community favorite, and so I do think he probably deserves a little bit more credit than I'm giving him.
Absolutely. So who
Uh,
do you have next?
Next for me is going to be Casey Concepcion. Is he going to be
Mm,
listed? Yeah, okay. Um, Kind of a similar mold actually to Jeremy Bernard, where he's really shifty, really elusive, good tackle breaker, yak guy, and also is used a lot in the special teams game. He's a return man, and he's been really good in that category as well. Something that I thought was really impressive to see this year is that he's being used more down the field than he was in his time at NC State. Now that he's transferred over to A&M, um, he went from an A dot below 9 in his first 2 years to an A dot that's all the way above 14. And so I think it's good to see that he's at least capable of more than just that kind of around the line of scrimmage screen gadgety usage that we also just talked about with Jeremy Bernard. Um, The per route run efficiency, I think, has been really good, especially his first downs per route run, targets per route run, and dominator rating, all incredibly impressive, stack up really well with the top guys in this class. And because of that special teams usage that I talked about, I think he's going to be given more of a chance to prove himself and stick on an NFL roster, just because I think he can be impactful in that area. And so, even if he's not quite as developed as a receiver early on, he can stick around and prove that to an NFL team.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. I had a lot of the same notes you did. Extremely shifty, slippery, yak potential is his calling card. But is he more quick than fast? And I think this year, like you said, they've been throwing the ball to him deeper. So I think that that's kind of answered the question that is not so much the case. I think he is also fast. He's got pretty good long speed too. And he's one of those guys who's produced on an elite level for first down or touchdown rate receptions this year also. I think his rate is 80.5% so far. So he has been absolutely hooping this season as well. Now, the things I am concerned about, because he is a smaller guy, he could get out muscled, and we see him sort of get out muscled sometimes, have some issues with the press, and drops have been a bit of an issue for him over his career. He has a 9% career drop rate, and he's 10% so far this year. So it got a little bit negligibly worse, but just a little bit worse. But at the same time, he is someone that I am optimistic about because he has been producing for a while now at this point. But he could stay for another year too. Is that something we're concerned about here?
Uh, I think we can probably bring that up for a lot of these guys.
Yeah.
This is more of an aside than anything, but I think across all positions, not just wide receivers, we're looking at quarterbacks, running backs, everybody. There's a lot of these underclassmen that I think have a high likelihood of going back to school, even furthering the idea that the 2027 class is going to be amazing and maybe taking away from this class a little bit. Um, so that is something that we should be appropriately concerned about, but we'll have to see as time goes on.
Okay. Fair enough.
Um, I have, I think, two more guys to talk about briefly in terms of top 10. Do you have more guys on your list as well?
I also have two left.
Yeah, let's
I'm
hear it.
interested if we got the same two.
Yeah,
So the next one I have left is Chris Brazzell II, someone who I believe is
absolutely.
going to inspire a lot of fantasy team names in the future. But with that being said, at 6'5", 200 pounds, he's an absolute, unit, but he's also kind of slender at the same time. So extremely tall, kind of thin, but he is strong at the catch point. And something I do want to give him credit for, he has been able to make big plays and do a lot on sort of a low volume, or not low volume, but not high volume for sure. And his drop rate compared to last year has gone down a lot. Last year it was 17%, this year 4%. So a lot of improvement there. And he's averaging 17.2 yards per catch in 2025 so far.
Yeah.
So he's just been producing big play after big play, which is what you want to see out of someone who's 6'5". So going forward, he's someone who could very easily be, early career red zone or like a deep ball threat who could develop into more in the future. But I'm not banking on it. He would need to, get better as a route runner and just stronger at the catch point all around. Maybe even get a bulk up a little bit just to protect himself. But he is someone that has potential at least to score some fantasy points in the future for sure.
I had almost the exact same things written in my notes as well. Seems like purely a vertical deep threat. Although it is sometimes hard to tell with these Tennessee guys whether they're kind of propped up by scheme or if they're like held back or pigeonholed by it. We've seen kind of
Yeah.
the
We've
what
seen both sides of the spectrum.
yeah, like Cedric Tillman, Jalen Hyatt. Like,
Yeah,
is it real? Is it fake? Who knows? But yeah, it does kind of seem to me that he's probably going to be just a downfield threat. He doesn't create a lot of yak on his own. Um, I got to give him credit. That game against Georgia, he had 3 touchdowns in that game. Again, basically all of them coming on deep bombs. But against really good competition, we saw him step up. So that's good to see.
yeah,
But analytically, we saw a lot of the same things that we saw on tape: low yak per reception numbers, and even lower for his career at 3.5. Yards per out run is fine at 2.58. And his first down rates, I think, were actually really impressive. So he's kind of all over the place analytically on film. There's definitely things to be excited about. He flashes high levels of talent, but then there's inconsistencies as well. But that's why we have him all the way down here.
definitely agree.
All right. And then the last guy that I wanted to bring up, I honestly don't have a ton to say about. Really, I'm bringing him up because he's somebody that I've seen on a lot of other analyst lists. It's going to be Jacoby Lane. Um, I just wasn't that impressed with him on film. I thought he looked physical, and I thought that he was pretty good in contested catch situations. But there wasn't much else that stood out to me. And he probably has the worst analytical profile of any of the receivers that we've talked about so far. Um, to be fair to him, he is playing alongside Mekhi Lemon, so I wouldn't expect him to have crazy stats, and he wouldn't put up, great efficiency, volume stats, or anything like that. But for somebody that we're talking about, producing reliable fantasy production for you at the next level, I'd want to see more than what he's put on tape and what he's shown in the numbers so far. Is this the next guy on your list as well, or are
I
you going
actually
somewhere
have
else?
I have someone different. It does get a little nasty down here, I will say.
Yeah, now I want to hear yours.
My number 10 is actually Omar Cooper Jr. out of
Oh,
Indiana.
okay.
Just somebody who I saw while I was watching Elijah Surratt, and I noticed, like, out of the 2, he's more of, like, the gadget guy out of the 2, or at least, like, the more physical out of the 2, I'll put it like that, because he's a really good blocker, he's good after the catch, he's not really a great, route runner. I wouldn't say he's a great route runner at all, but he's somebody that they move around everywhere on the field and kinda use him wherever he kinda fits in, and he makes it work, to be honest. Like, he looks like a running back with wide receiver long speed that's got good moves in the open field, and at 6 foot, 200 pounds, he's got a good frame for it. So, just somebody who I thought was an interesting gadget player kinda right now that could develop into more at the next level possibly.
Yeah, I like it. He is somebody that I noticed while looking at Elijah Surratt, but not somebody that I did a deep dive on. So I don't want to comment too much. But I like what you had to say, and I'm glad that we brought him up. You want to talk about kind of how this class stacks up to historical other wide receiver classes?
Absolutely, let's do it.
All right, so let me pull this off the screen. So yeah, just my kind of initial take when looking through my historical data since 2019. I think that this class probably compares most favorably to like the 2023 class, the one that had JSN, Jordan
Yeah,
Addison, Zay Flowers, Quentin Johnston.
yeah,
Um, it doesn't have the elite of the elite, like with Jamar Chase in what was that, 2021? Like it doesn't have the Chase, the Smitty, the Jalen Waddle. It's not 2024 with Malik Neighbors, Harrison, Adunze. But clearly we've seen that 2023 class has blossomed and turned into really fantasy viable receivers, especially obviously JSN. He's kind of ascended into that elite tier. And I think we could see that from some of the guys in this group. They're just not quite to the level of prospect that we've seen from some of the other classes in recent years.
I absolutely 100% agree. That was the first class that jumped into my head when we were taking a look through. So I 100% agree. I think, like you said, there is no guy at the top of this class that is just an absolute generational. You need to go and get this guy. But these guys, there's a lot of solid guys in this class who are going to end up producing at some point. I feel like just like you said, with the way they project, with the way they're playing now, I think these are some solid guys who are going to have roles in the NFL for time to come.
Absolutely. I'm trying to think of any other reasonable comparisons. Like honestly, when you talked about Emeka Igbuka and things like that, we could kind of compare it to 2025 to a certain extent, just from a prospect profile perspective. Um, Even 2022, like I think that class was probably better overall. Like I think Garrett Wilson is probably a slight step up above kind of what this top three was, just from a prospect profile. But Chris Olave was in that group, and I talked to you a little bit about
Mhm.
this off air, where I think Chris Olave is kind of a good barometer to what we should be expecting these prospects to look like coming into the NFL. Not necessarily that they're all stylistically like that, but just maybe that level of production is kind of what we should expect um, from a prospect profile perspective.
Which
So
if
that's
I
kind of where I'm at.
Which if I can get a receiver that produces like Chris Olave, especially this year with the volume, I'm happy
Yeah,
with that.
absolutely. But yeah, anything else you want to mention before we wrap this thing up?
I think that's all I got for this class. It's definitely an interesting class though, for sure. Don't sleep on this class. Don't think it's anything like bad, but there's some value that can be found probably in some later rounds depending on how the draft shakes out this year.
Yeah, definitely. I mentioned a couple times throughout this video talking about 2027. We're comparing it to what I expect to be one of the better classes we've ever seen.
Yeah,
And so it's unfair to say that this one is going to be bad just because the next one might be historic.
generational.
And also, there's so much variance to this. You never know what's going to happen. And so you always want to buy in to these classes, especially when people start talking down on them. That's where you're going to find value. And so, yeah, I like that you brought that up. And I think that that is important. But that is going to wrap it up for us. So if you guys enjoyed the video, if you guys got anything valuable out of this, we would really appreciate it if you left a like on it, if you hit that sub button, and if you hit that notification bell so you can stay up to date with all of our latest releases. Let us know what you think. If you agree, disagree with any of our takes, if we left anybody out, if you thought somebody should have been higher, drop it down in the comments below. Be part of the discussion. And if you're interested in being part of our community specifically, you can also check the link in the description down below for our Discord. But yeah, I think that will do it. We appreciate you guys as always, and we'll catch you in the next video. Peace.
Peace.